And then part of the realism of the stories is that the people that are being presented are by no means good. I mean, maybe with the exception of Noah. Noah seemed to be a pretty good guy. Although he did get drunk and end up naked, exposed to his sons and so forth. But I mean, he isn't talked about a lot as a character. It's a pretty compressed story. But Abraham had plenty of problems, not least of which was his inability to leave home, and then, his lying about his wife, and there's all sorts of mistakes. And then Jacob, who we're going to talk about tonight, is an even more morally ambivalent character. He's, especially at the beginning of the story, he isn't the sort of person that you would pick out, especially if you were a hack writer. You wouldn't pick him out as the hero of the story. He does a lot of things that are really pretty reprehensible. And it takes him an awful long time to learn better. And yet he's the person who's put forward as the father of the 12 tribes of Israel. It's from this flawed person that the people whose story you might say is at the fundamental, constitutes the fundamental underpinning of our culture. It's from this deeply flawed individual that group emerges. And so you might think of that as a relief too, because you're no knight in shining armor, with a pure moral past. I mean, people make mistakes of catastrophic proportions non-stop, and that also means that these stories put forward something approximating hope, because in their realism, in their moral realism, they present heroes, I suppose, the heroes of renown, right? The patriarchs of old, let's say, who are realistic people, who have fits of anger and rage, and who are murderous at times, and who are deeply embroiled with family dispute, and who have adulterous affairs, and like they do all the terrible things that people do. And the weird thing is that God is still with them. And, it isn't obvious what that means, or even if it means anything, but it's not disputable as far as I can tell that we're conscious, and that consciousness is a transcendent phenomena which we do not understand, and that the landscape that we traverse through is moral. Like every story you ever watch, anything that grips your imagination on the screen or in the theater, or like any story that grabs you, is a story of moral striving. It's just not interesting otherwise, right? The person has to be confronted with complex moral choices, and then you see the outcome, and the good guy does it right and the bad guy does it badly, and things don't go so well for the bad guy generally. And if it's a bit more sophisticated, the good and the bad are in the same individual, and that's a more compelling story. But so we could say, well, we could make the assumption that it might be worthwhile thinking of the world as it has been thought of classically, as a theater upon which the forces of good and evil continually strive for dominance. And for the life of me, especially after I started reading deeply into 20th century history and all the terrible things that happened in the 20th century, and all the terrible, unbelievably incomprehensible things that people did to one another, I just couldn't see seeing things any other way as realistic. Because I don't think that you can immerse yourself in 20th century history without coming to the conclusion that evil is a reality. And if it's a reality, it depends on what you mean by reality, but it's a fundamental enough reality for me. And if it's a reality, then I don't see how you can escape from the conclusion that the cosmos, as we experience it at least, is a place of moral striving. And well, that's one of the things that's really illustrated in the story of Jacob, and I found that quite striking. So